I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with author Frank H. Tainter, PhD, about his compelling book, Eres Tu. We're delighted to have him join us today on Spotlight. We thank the folks at Inks and Bindings for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Frank, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Let's start out with the big picture. Let's tell the folks at home what Eras 2 is all about.
Okay, it's a novel. However, it has a number of components to it. It's a romance story. It's a history story. It's a science story. And briefly, what it covers is the arrival to the North American continent of a group of Pewenche individuals, a small group, perhaps a dozen families, who migrated across the Beringia Land Bridge in northwestern Alaska about 14,000 years ago. Within just a few generations, they migrated all the way down through North America, the Central America, and into the southern part of Chile. Now, about that part of their trip was covered in the first 2 or 3 chapters. The next part has to do with the more modern evolution of 4 generations of Pewenches. They were all governed by women who were in charge of knowing about medicinal plants for the health and well-being of the each family, and they kind of held the family together. And then the last portion has to do with the last generation who endured the Pinochet military coup in 1973. In all of this story, in the modern story, is a young man named Robert, who is a citizen of Montana. He and a group of his friends at the university started a little business that had to do with selling extracts of medicinal plants. And they decided that Robert would be a good one to go to southern Chile and collect all the data he could about medicinal plants that these Pewenche Machi, the medicine doctors, had collected. And that, in essence, is what the story is about. Now, he goes there, and in the process of looking for plants, he meets a young lady named Rosa, who is in the 3rd generation of the modern day Pewenches. And they make love, and she becomes pregnant. However, he does not know that. And he is then drafted into the US Army during the Vietnam War. He goes to Vietnam, is wounded, loses a leg, and is in a coma for a long period of time. Now, the first chapter in the book is what starts the modern part of it. He returns to Chile and finds out he has a daughter named Paulina. She's 7 years old. And the last third of the book has to do with he and his wife, Rosa, raising Paulina, a very intelligent, smart young lady, and she becomes a medicinal plant doctor. And the last chapter in the book has to do with her presenting a scientific presentation at a medicinal plant conference, in which she explains how she saved her mother from dying from ovarian cancer by using a very antiquated medicinal plant to save her. And
Amazing, amazing. This is
that's
quite an epic that you've written, Frank. What inspired you to write it?
Well, it's kind of peculiar. I eventually married a Chilean lady, and her nephew he built some cabins on the slope of volcano Lonquimay, which is in south central Chile. And when we were down there one time visiting, he said, "You know, Tio, it would be nice if you could write a little pamphlet or booklet covering the plants and the animals and birds that live in this area." Well, I thought to myself, I could write a book about the plants. I knew a lot about them, but I didn't know anything about the animals. So I mulled that over in my mind for quite a while. And going back on the airplane, this was in 2013, I believe, I lay awake all night thinking about this pamphlet. And by the time I got to Florida, the entire story of Lonquimay, the novel, was in my brain. And when I got home, I just started typing it on my computer. And in a matter of a few days, I had the whole story written.
Amazing, amazing. And putting it in a novelized form makes it more palatable to a lot of readers, don't you think?
Well, oh yes. Well, yeah, I'm my experience as being a scientist, all the publications I've written, over 150 research publications, a textbook, and some other things, they're all based on facts. There's no nuances. I look at the facts, I write the publication, and that's it. It's actually pretty mechanical. It would be a good thing for artificial intelligence could do, because you could just plug in all the facts and it would plug out the answer. But in the novel, it was quite different, and it was really amazing to me that I was able to be inspired to write the novel, which I thought was actually pretty good. I'm not a vain person, but my daughter just came back from the Netherlands, and she uh, gave me a quote by Vincent van Gogh. Someone asked him, "Where do you get the inspiration to paint?" He said, "The picture comes to me in a moment." And that's kind of the way this story was. And I'm really grateful that I had the inspiration to write it. I don't know, I've written a few other coloring books and one novel since then, but I don't think they are of the character and quality of this one.
Absolutely. Have you envisioned this as a series or a film by any chance?
Oh yes, when I first wrote it, I would read different chapters of it, and of course, you think about what you wish could happen. And then I was approached by a couple of organizations years ago who wanted to develop it into a film. And most of them, unfortunately, were kind of scams. They took some of my money and then they never did anything, except the last now I'm working with Brookside Press. I think they're honest about it. And in my mind, of course, they tell me you need to convince a filmmaker to do it. I said, well, the whole film is in my brain. I could help them produce it in a very economical way, because each chapter is in my mind, and I could just tell their people what to do, and they wouldn't have to do any research or anything on it. It's all in my brain, and it would just flow. And I think it could be made into a wonderful movie. It would basically cover what I just told you about the history of the book. Just a minute or two could be presented about the ancient history. More time could be spent on the history from about 1900 until 1973, and then the majority of the book would cover from 1973 to the present. It would start out as being told by Robert, Paulina's father, but then it would shift to being narrated by Paulina, and she could narrate the rest of it. And I think it could be a very good story. There's also a chapter in the book about Chilean folklore music. Some of the music could be used as background for actually most of the chapters, I think.
Yeah,
And it could be done in
absolutely.
English and Spanish.
It sounds like you have a clear vision for what this film would look and sound like, which of course is,
Absolutely,
yeah,
yes, absolutely.
yeah. Tell the audience what the title Eres Tu translates to and why you chose that as a title.
Well, the title is a combination of Spanish and English. The entire title is Eres Tu, A History of Lonquimay. Lonquimay is the volcano next to this village called Lonquimay, where most of the action took place. Eres Tu is a two-word question in Spanish, and it means, are you the one? Is it you? And that refers to when Robert comes back to Chile. And actually, in the first chapter, when he comes back and finds out that he has a daughter named Paulina, he walks up to her house. She's fixing the roof. She sees him. Paulina comes out throwing a stick for a dog, and they both see him coming up the road. She climbs down the ladder. Remember, it's been 7 years now since she saw him. They walk toward each other, and the dog that he gave them runs up, sits down, and shakes his tail. And Robert doesn't know what to think. There's a song in Chile that asks, "Why did you not wait for me, my love?" He's thinking she must have gotten married, and this is their child. And then she walks up to him and her eyes get larger and she puts her hand over her mouth. Roberto, Eres Tu? Eres Tu? And that was the inspiration for the title of the book. And
Wonderful.
after that, then they meet it. They don't explain this until chapter 10, that's when the rest of the story begins.
Wonderful. Final question. You're a scientist. Do you think we overlook some of these herbal plant treatments and cures and go to pharmacy instead, pharmaceuticals?
Absolutely. Although there's nothing wrong with pharmacies,
Right.
but I think it's very worthwhile to investigate the medicinal plants of any culture.
Right.
And some of these are being tested very, very severely by scientists now, and they actually find that they have some beneficial effect. A lot of this is being done today in China. China had medicinal plants 3,000 or more years ago, and now they're finally knowledgeable enough about the science of it that they know what chemicals are involved, and they can be cleaned up and then sold for medicinal plant purposes. And that's the same thing in this country. Our Native Americans have medicinal plant knowledge. The Chileans did, and I think it's a wide open universe really for exploration and utility.
Absolutely. They have sustained for thousands of years some of these treatments and cures, and it's time that Western scientists took a good look.
Absolutely, and they are.
Yeah.
A number of the medicinal plants in Chile are being investigated now, and I won't get into the science of that, but they have found chemicals that are actually beneficial. And the same thing is true in this country. Some of the major pharmaceutical companies are investigating these. I think it's a wide open universe for the future.
Wonderful. Well, as you can tell, folks at home, Frank Tainter is a brilliant man. He's a PhD. He knows his stuff. He has written a compelling book, an epic book that will capture your imagination and capture your heart. It is called Eres Tu, and it is highly recommended. Frank, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. It was my honor to be on your show.
The honor was all mine. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.